Welcome to the Northumberland Festival of the Arts. My name is Shane Joseph, and in this series of occasional interviews, we feature individual artists, leaders of arts groups and organizations, civic leaders, and art lovers in our county. Today we have the privilege of speaking to Reva Nelson. Reva is a former actor, teacher librarian, seminar leader, and keynote speaker across Canada and internationally. Reva changed careers due to boredom, not being fired. As president of Wordsworth Keynote and Seminars, she noticed how many people were losing their jobs or were extremely stressed and began to research resilience. In 1997, she wrote Bounce Back, Creating Resilience from Adversity, and coached individuals and business groups. Her book sold over 5,000 copies. Reva then moved to Coburg 6 years ago and has since rekindled her love of writing poetry, short plays, and insightful newspaper columns. Her website is www.revanelson.ca. With that, welcome, Reva.
Thank you.
5,000 copies. Now that's a Canadian bestseller.
It is, yes, and it was wonderful.
Great. So Reva, I have a few questions for you. Resilience is a kind of a much bandied word. Everybody's talking about it. What does it mean to you?
Well, it's interesting that it is a word that you hear all the time now, because in the 90s, mid 90s, there were not many people talking about it. And when I researched it, it was used with people who had drug addictions. It was used for children from very difficult home situations. And I actually interviewed a child psychologist. So I needed to really research that word. And the synthesis of everything I studied to me came to mean that resilience is not just handling stress or getting on with it, but it's the ability to bounce back from difficult situations, go through them, get through them, but actually emerge stronger and better, which takes some doing. But it's not just coming back from something, it's actually gaining new strength and new insights from difficulties.
Now, you taught resilience in management seminars and you have written the book. What are the core elements in the formula that you recommend for resilience?
Well, I synthesized from some business writings. There were not many at the time. And from psychology, that there are 10 skills. I won't go through them all. They are in the book, Bounce Back, which I guess is fuzzy because I made the background fuzzy. There are a couple of skills I'll focus on, but keeping a sense of humor, allowing yourself to even go to a store and look at funny cards, but get something, find something humorous within the worst situations. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Being able to handle stress is a given, being able to pull back, just allow yourself to be quiet and still. Deal with anger, because sometimes there's anger through difficulty, especially you can see it now in companies, and anger at Air Canada, for example. It's a lot of anger. You need to work on your own self-esteem, be able to visualize something being better, be resourceful, take some risks, and have faith that things will improve, things can get better. One example, I was just thinking of this the other day, because my workshop will be, of course, more personal than corporate. But when my aunt, who we were all very fond of, was going through cancer, and she was an immigrant. She's not a learned woman, but a very warm, wonderful woman. And so she'd lost all her hair. And I went to see her with, some nervousness and trepidation. And she flings open the door. She's got a scarf on her head, and she says, "I bet you didn't expect to be greeted by Mother Teresa." It was such an unusual comment for her, but it just showed her sense of humor was right at the forefront, and she was going to make it easier for me. So the most resilient people are able to find some humor in the worst situations. That's why you'll sometimes find doctors and nurses, and actually funeral directors have some of the most cutting, amazing senses of humor because of what they have to deal with all the time. And also, a core thing is to just a belief that things will get better, visualize a future that's better, and help somebody else. So in a natural disaster, such as a hurricane or something like that, the people who start to help clean up or start to bring water to other people, whatever it is, it could be the smallest thing, but helping others helps you. There's no question about that.
Good. That's a lot of good, interesting tips there to think about.
Mhm.
Now, they say when consultants and writers talk about a certain subject, they're supposed to have lived the experience. So how did you master resilience in your own life? Do you have some examples other than for your aunt, of course?
Yes, yes. Well, I can go back to being an actor. When you're an actor, you're freelance, and sometimes you have money, sometimes you don't. When I started my own company, I was a single parent of a 2-year-old, and I moved to Toronto, and we had very little money. And so, sometimes we could order pizza, sometimes we could go out to eat, and a lot of times we just made our own pizza and made it fun. So I've been definitely through some tough times. You don't expect to be divorced with a 2-year-old. You don't expect to have a degree from university and be struggling to find some way to pay the bills. And then at the very worst times, I'd get a huge contract. I mean, you really do have to stick with it. And I think people who know that the most are artists and scientists, because when you think of scientists and researchers, they fail all the time. They're always failing and always learning, and they keep on going. So if you choose safety and security and you have maybe a government job, it's not quite the same as it used to be. Or for example, IBM used to be very secure and it's not anymore. Those kinds of jobs, you're mostly thinking that it's going to be the same. But if you're doing anything freelance, it's really up and down in terms of your income. So that's one of the ways you need to be resourceful and always think of new ways to do things.
No, I'm fully aware of the feast or famine syndrome
Yes.
that the consultant has to live with.
Yes.
Now, the theme of the Northumberland Festival of the Arts is resilience. How have artists demonstrated this, especially at this time of pandemic?
Well, I think it's exactly the time of the pandemic that has brought a lot of resourcefulness to the forefront. So I was just in an interview on TV the other day, I forget his name, but it was a musician who started doing rooftop concerts. He said he would go anywhere to do a rooftop concert. You just had to get in touch with him. And he actually had to borrow a ladder for some of the things to get up there illegally. But he did like 3 weeks of rooftop concerts, because performers and artists and writers, I mean, eventually you need your work to be seen. Otherwise, it's a hobby. So I think people made concerts in places that they did not normally put on a concert. If you think of the Loft here in Coburg, I mean, Ken Prue had a fundraiser that he didn't start, other people started to keep it going. Of course, Zoom kept everyone going and all the arts associations going. So now when we meet people, if they're not in a little square, it's like, who are you again? Like, I know you, but I don't know from where. Well, yeah, it was a square in the top left, but people were resourceful. And I think restaurants as well and coffee shops, they started serving gelato or something like that, or made different kinds of muffins. And people were serving food outside of the restaurant when they had to. I mean, it was just such a difficult time. But a lot of people did things they wouldn't normally have done through the pandemic. I finally gathered all my poems and wrote some new ones and put out a poetry book. And I think a lot of artists and writers did use the time to be creative. You're inward a lot of the time anyway, but eventually it has to get out there. So I think people who weren't artists did a lot of cleaning and painting of rooms, but a lot of artists did some of their best and most creative work during the pandemic. So that's the skill of being resourceful.
No, I recall, I mean, even for us as writers, the virtual book launch was born during the pandemic, and we'd never dabbled in it before. And suddenly we were reaching thousands of people. I don't know if they were selling thousands of books, but we were reaching certainly thousands of people that we had never reached before. And that was purely because we were pushed into that situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of us learned some new things with technology. So I know you did that we never would have learned had it not been for the pandemic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So now you have a seminar called Bounce Back, Creating Resilience from Adversity, which is going to be on the 27th of September at 10:30 a.m. at the Port Hope Library.
Yes.
And I hope you get many, many attendees. And tickets for that event are available at the festivalofthearts.ca website. What would success be for you as a seminar leader in delivering that lecture, and what would success be for someone like me as a participant in the seminar?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. First of all, I would say in any of the seminars I do, and I state this up front, there's real privacy, because sometimes people come out with things they've never had no idea they'd come out with in terms of something that they might be struggling with. So it will only be as personal as anybody wants it to be. No one has to share anything. But often people do share if they feel safe in the environment. So the confidentiality is asked for and spoken of. And success would be if people get some ideas, some new skills of ways to cope they might not have thought of. And if there's a shift, if someone might be feeling that they can't move on, or they're a little stuck, or they just feel somewhat overwhelmed, first of all, being in a group where other people say, oh, I feel that way too, can be very helpful. We'll have some time for brainstorming and thinking of new ways to do things, because it's so easy to just think you need to continue in the same way. And it's not that I suggest everyone quit their jobs and run out and do something creative, or, if you've always been a painter, you become a musician and have a chance for your own concert. I mean, it doesn't quite work that way, but there might be some collaborations that come out of it, just from people meeting each other. But mostly support and understanding, and some new ideas, some new methods, some ways to approach something that they might not have seen before. Because it's why we talk to anybody. It's sharing, and it's getting a perspective that you might not have come to by yourself.
Good. Well, I wish you all the best with this seminar. Certainly a topic that we all need to immerse ourselves in and deal with in this time. And for viewers, again, I would mention the date. It's the seminar's name is Bounce Back, Creating Resilience from Adversity, on the 27th of September at 10:30 a.m. at the Port Hope Library in Port Hope. And the tickets are available at www.festivalofthearts.ca. There's a whole bunch of events. There's over 40 events, but you'll certainly be able to find Reva's event in the list. So with that, Reva, thank you very much for speaking to us today. I wish you all the best with your seminar, and I'm sure we'll be meeting you in various other events during the festival.
Certainly.
Thanks.
Thank you, Shane.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.